Tonight on Mississippi Insight, the race for president. Ahead of the Democratic National Convention, Joe Biden names his choice for running mate. Tonight, reaction to the pick of Senator Kamala Harris. Also, the return of Mississippi lawmakers, what they were able to accomplish in 2 days in Jackson. And a conversation about race. 12 News brings together a diverse panel to discuss the issue. And we talk with a local minister who's helping a local business handle what can be a touchy topic. Hello and welcome to Mississippi Insight. I'm Byron Brown. Thank you for joining us. Well, this past week, 12 News brought together a diverse panel for a Mississippi town hall, a conversation about race. We were joined by civil rights activist Dr. Flonzie Brown Wright, author and investigative journalist Jerry Mitchell, recent Jackson State grad and Harvard Law student Jordan Jefferson, and conservative radio host James Tope. We covered a number of topics and there were some contentious moments. Here now are some highlights.
One of the things that comes to mind is, there have been studies actually that have shown that people nationally will say that they think that race relations are really bad, but when asked about their own community, they say that they're actually good. And so that's a conundrum. That's a contradiction because, and I would like to hear your perspective on this, Jordan, but, I grew up in New Jersey. New Jersey is much smaller black population as a percentage of the population than Mississippi. Mississippi is, I think, the highest in the country. But by virtue of that, to me, this has been my experience, I really feel like race relations are better here than in New Jersey because there's just not as much interaction. But I really would be interested to hear your perspective on that.
I do agree with the last statement you just said, and I also would like to bite off what you said. I feel like so much in America we try to get so progressive on race and issues that we've dealt with that we don't want to look at them anymore. Like, that happened, let's move on. But if you don't understand your past or what's been going on, you can't move on, and people won't understand why you feel the way you feel. I feel like that's the issue with America right now with race. I feel like my white counterparts are like, just move on. It was only 50, 60 years ago. I'm still dealing with it now, unintentionally. And that's just how I feel.
Dr. Wright, you want to interject on this?
Well, I think there are times when people don't really understand the depth of the topic, while at the same time, I know that there are people who are well-meaning people who really want to understand better the plight of the disadvantaged, and so it's kind of a double-edged sword, if you will. Sometimes people don't even realize that they may be participating in acts that may be considered racism. And so, and then there are times, like the gentleman said, we just want to forget it. We've had to forget so much. We've had to forgive so much as a people until sometimes you don't want to talk about it. You want to believe that everything is okay, that there are no issues, there are no problems. And I think that's a testament to our ancestors who taught us to always look ahead and not look back.
But let me ask you this. I mean, don't you think forgiveness really is something that can bring us forward? And I agree, it's important. It's, those who forget history are doomed to repeat it. 100% agree with that. But sometimes it feels like we're kind of going on the border, or maybe straddling the border of just opening up wounds and just, really trying to, do it for maybe some reasons that are not in the interest of racial reconciliation, which is what this is all about, right?
Well, but I think what happens is, you mentioned wounds, and I think that's a good analogy. I know Merle Evers, the widow of Medgar Evers, told me, yes, this is a wound, but it's never been cleaned. And so we have to go through that process. And I'm not trying to mention my book, but I know that a lot of people who've read my book, white, black, people who are involved in the civil rights movement, have come afterwards and said to me, I never knew all this happened. It's because we don't know our history. And so it's hard to reconcile. In order to reconcile, you've got to have truth. And unless you have truth, you can't really reconcile. And so I think it's so easy, as Jordan mentioned, to kind of go, well, that happened a long time ago. It didn't involve me. My family never owned slaves, or whatever the explanation is. So, but that ignores the history. And so I think if we have a better understanding of history and we begin to understand, then I think we can begin to break down those walls and communicate and understand each other better.
Go ahead. You want to
I was saying, like, going off the wounds, since the pandemic, this is the first time that black lives have actually been pushed out. This has never happened, and where black people finally realize I have a voice and that it can mean something. I don't think you understand how that feels and how it feels that as a race together that we actually mean something, because it's never happened in history. We've never united like this ever.
You don't think Martin Luther King and John Lewis
Yes.
united in the 1960s to get, pass the Civil Rights Act and things like that?
I do, but not when the America is with you with it. No.
I mean, America, it passed Congress. What do you mean?
Look at the 60s. Look at the 60s. If you look at most of the marches, yes, there were a certain percentage of white people. But in Starkville, Mississippi the other day, more than 2,000 people marched in a Black Lives Matter. The vast majority of the people who marched in the Black Lives Matter march in Starkville, Mississippi were white. So what I'm saying is that didn't happen back in the 1960s. That's much different. So we are at a different moment in time.
Well, that's not what Jordan said. Jordan said that this was the first time that black people have come together. And so actually, to your point, no, you're both right.
This is the first time black people have come together and we mean something to the country.
I'm agreeing.
I mean, I would say that that's not giving due respect to the civil rights leaders like the doctor and others. I mean, they actually accomplished a great deal, did they not?
I would agree. I'm not disagreeing with that.
You want to chime in on this? You're hearing this discussion. What's your thoughts on what's being said here?
Well, I'm just listening and taking it all in. I have mixed emotions about all that we are saying. It's still incumbent upon us. If we really want real racial reconciliation, we must do one thing. We must come to the table and leave our perceptions, our perspectives at the door, and sit at the table as brothers and sisters.
You can see the full town hall at WJTV.com. Up next, a local pastor who's helping people at a local business talk about race. As we saw during our town hall, talking about race can bring out different kinds of emotions, especially now when tensions are high and the issue of race relations is especially in focus. One local pastor is helping people talk about race and the differences among all of us by working with people at a local business. Elder J.J. Thompson with New Hope Church of God in Christ joins us now live via Zoom. And Pastor, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Byron, for having me, man.
Well, you have spent the past 2 months working with the people at Patty Pack Honda. Talk about what you've been able to do.
Well, actually, I worked at Patty Pack, and it all started with one of our employees heard a conversation on the sales tower, and he seemed to get offended by it, so much so that he went to speak with our general manager and mentioned to him that he felt that that wasn't the time or the place to have that conversation. But what they also concluded was this, Byron, that the conversation needed to be had. So my general manager got with me and said he wanted to set aside a time and a place to have this conversation. And this is how we gathered together and began to have our conversation on race relations. Granted, now, this was during the time of the death of Floyd, when we had unrest and protest and the pandemic. And we began it about 2 months ago, and it has been an eye-opening experience.
I know these are hard conversations. When you first began the conversations, were you getting a lot of attendance? Was it mandatory, or was it open to everyone? Anyone wanted to come? How did that work out?
You know, that's a great question. No, it was open to everyone wanted to come out, and it was definitely not mandatory. I actually facilitate the meeting, and the one thing that he said, he wanted to make it God-centered. So we opened up with a scripture to kind of bring us all in together to try to get an understanding on our topics. Man, we had some different topics. I remember the first topic we had was, how do you feel? And that was, how do you feel as a black man? with everything that's going on. Again, this was during the time of the George Floyd's death and the protests. And how do you feel as a white person right now? And, you know, as we went around the table and began to ask others, everyone at the table, how they felt, it was amazing, the answers we got. And Byron, one that stands out to me is this. And one of my managers said, he said, I am here to try to understand. He said, when I look in the mirror, I see a middle-aged white man. And I know that when Black people see me, this is what they see. He said, so I'm here simply here to try to understand how it feels to be Black. And man, let me tell you, that just opened up the whole meeting. And it gave everyone an opportunity to be in a setting, man, at the job, to use the terminology of Black, white, Black lives matter, white lives matter, but to use it in a way that we can try to come to some type of consensus, agreement that change needs to come. So, I mean.
Yeah, these are difficult conversations. A lot of people are uncomfortable with talking about race. So how do you get people, I guess, to be comfortable with being a little bit uncomfortable?
Here's the deal, stepping outside of the box. We've been doing this approximately 2 months, and you have to have consistency. You have to have a format that people understand that there are people want to hear what you say and how you feel. The one thing that we have not ran into, and that is we do agree to disagree, but the passion you have in the meeting, it only stays as passion. It doesn't become anger. It doesn't become riotous. It becomes passion. And in order for people to get involved, all they have to do is sit down and listen to their neighbor, man, whether they're Black or white. I'm telling you, I found out some things about my white brothers and Black brothers that I love. And when we speak now, we speak together. So the biggest thing, to answer your question, is making the first step to sit down with other races and just see how they feel.
You know, one of the comments that came out during the town hall, one of the panels talked about white people are afraid to talk about race because they're afraid they'll be called racist if they say something. So how do you talk to others who are afraid to say something?
By opening up yourself. I found that out while I facilitate the meeting, by opening up ourselves. And you know, they say that some people will be called racist. Well, you know, I've been called Uncle Tom, simply because I believe that everyone in this country is created equal, and I believe I don't think anyone should feel bad about their color. And we can go on and on about racism, but they should not feel bad or afraid that people will call them racism. If you are in a controlled environment, and again, keeping it God-centered and being able to express it. I'm going to say this, man. There was one guy in there who said, look, I'm proud to be white. And I loved it because I know him. And when he said that he was not trying to be racist, he was simply saying, in this meeting, I'm actually able to say that without people thinking that I'm a racist. And that's what these small meetings, that's what they've done, giving us an opportunity. Yeah, we still have to address systemic racism and slavery and things, how we got here. But right now we're looking to move forward, all right, even though we're looking at the past. And the one thing else I found out is this, Byron. The young man that said that his father told him to get the Black friends out of the house, the question was posed to him, what would you do now that you're grown and your child brought a minority or a person of another color there? You know what he said? I would feed them. I would play with them, whether it's in the pool or not. And that's when I knew that times were changing. Man, that's America. That is America. So that is where we are trying to go, again, to get to a place where we can have the conversation. We may not solve the problem, but man, we can just have a conversation.
Thank you for talking to us and sharing what you were doing there at Patty Peck. And hopefully you can spread the message, and there will be more small meetings of talking about race. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And you guys, please keep up the good work. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. And we'll be right back. The Democratic National Convention is coming up next week, and Vice President Joe Biden has his pick for running mate, choosing Senator Kamala Harris. His one-time primary opponent is now on the ticket. 12 News' Jay Balexa talks to our political expert about the pairing.
She was once a competitor against Joe Biden for president. In a debate in June of 2019, Senator Kamala Harris attacked Biden on his race record.
You know, we saw even weeks after that, instead of it being a relationship of great animosity, he was willing to acknowledge that was that they're both candidates. This is what happens in a campaign. That didn't affect their relationship personally.
More than 1 year later, Senator Harris is now his running mate, and what Dr. Schrader says is shaped up to become a turnout election.
There's fewer voters out there than ever who are persuadable. They're either for Donald Trump, they're for Joe Biden, or they're not sure if they're going to go vote at all. And so what this is by a turnout election is trying to turn out as many of the people who are in your party base as you can.
Like people involved in a number of organizations associated with the Democratic Party.
She's got a 100% voting record with Planned Parenthood, a 100% voting record with the labor unions, 100% with the public school teachers, 100% with the Human Rights Campaign, 100% with the Children's Defense Fund.
In a tweet, Biden recalled when Senator Harris was Attorney General and worked closely with his late son, Beau, who was the Attorney General of Delaware at the time. From watching Biden over the years, Dr. Schrader says he values personal relationships, and Senator Harris is someone he feels he can trust.
Mississippi's new Democratic Party chair has high praise for Senator Harris's selection.
Biden-Harris is talking about making sure that everybody has affordable health care, which is the #1 issue in this state. Excellent choice. She's ready to be president on day one if she had to be. She represents, I think, the largest state in the Union, California. She's been the Attorney General for that state. She's been where the rubber meets the road, if you will.
Senator Kamala Harris was last in Mississippi in 2018 when she campaigned for Mike Espy in his Senate race. Espy is running again this year, and he was excited to see his fellow Howard University alum on the presidential ticket.
I think every American could sleep safely at night knowing that there will be a President Kamala Harris, who is again experienced, capable, solid, and she's run for president and she knows the ropes.
Well, coming up this week is the Democratic National Convention, fully virtual because of COVID-19. Espy talked with us about what he'd like to hear in Joe Biden's acceptance speech.
He served as the vice president. I know he's experienced, he's empathetic, he's strong, and I think he's going to return us from the edge. And he's going to return this whole country to a sense of normalcy. And then he's also going to say, hopefully, that the South is winnable. And if I've got to send him that message, I'm going to put that in his speech. I want him to say that the South is winnable and don't write off the South.
Now to the state legislature. And this past week, lawmakers convened for 2 days to consider 2 key items. 12 News' chief political correspondent Gerald Harris tells us what they accomplished and what still needs to be done.
By reconvening at the Capitol, state lawmakers bypassed Governor Tate Reeves.
We brought ourselves back to the Capitol. We didn't wait on the governor to call a special session. He had nothing to do with it.
Then lawmakers overrode the governor, reversing Reeves' line item veto on education spending funds.
Funding the education, getting that budget back on track, and doing the teacher recognition program, which we said we were going to do from the beginning.
But the governor says it was his plan all along to use the veto to get funds for education. Saying on Twitter, "Great news for teachers, our veto worked." The legislature agreed with us that merit pay works. They reversed course and will no longer cut teacher pay by $28 million.
We said from the beginning we were going to fund the teacher recognition program. I was told that he was informed of that. There was no need to veto the bill. The override of the House and the Senate showed strongly that we were in support of education.
But the House and the Senate are divided over coast dollars. Lawmakers left town with no deal on the Department of Marine Resources budget. The House wants the legislature to appropriate the money. The Senate wants to leave it to the governor to decide.
Well, we continue to have conversations about that. We'll continue to try to work towards resolving that budget issue. I'm optimistic that we'll continue to hopefully come to an agreement on that.
The legislature has 4 days by law that they can meet between now and October to work on COVID-related issues.
And we'll be right back. Thanks to Pastor J.J. Thompson for joining us. For Gerald Harris and Jay Bilexa, I'm Byron Brown. Join us next week for another edition of Mississippi Insight. Until then, make it a good night.